AJ Abell is running for Student Association President as a write-in candidate. We'll sit down and talk with him to see what his campaign's about. Also, we'll talk to a Syracuse grad who is running in another election, this one for City School Board. And the Secretary of Defense was on campus this week. Find out what he talked about. All that and more coming up on Talking Points. Good evening and welcome to Talking Points. I'm Max Darrow. Before we get the conversation started, let's go over this week's top headlines. The trial of Robert Newlander has come to an end. The jury found Newlander guilty of murder and tampering with physical evidence in the 2012 death of his wife, Leslie. Newlander had originally said that her death was accidental after a slip in the shower, but new evidence led prosecutors to say he killed her and it covered it up. Newlander is being held without bail and is scheduled to be sentenced on May 1st. And the highly contested New York State budget has been passed. The Assembly discussed the bill for a little bit longer than anticipated Tuesday night, and the budget did not pass until 3 hours past the deadline. The $142 million budget includes increased funding for schools that is tied to new regulations for teacher evaluations. The bill also offers up $50 million more to improve the state fairgrounds. And the Iranian nuclear talks have come to an end. The U.S., other European countries, and Iran released a joint statement about the progress of the negotiations. They said they have come to an agreement on the general terms of the deal. Iran has agreed to limit its stockpile of weapons in return for a lifting of the sanctions against them. And when we come back, Talking Points correspondent Topher Lane will have a live interview with write-in candidate AJ Abell.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
They're coming. Places, everybody.
Light check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Everything looks good on our end.
And lights.
Come alive with the forest. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Welcome back to Talking Points. I'm here with presidential candidate for Student Association, AJ Abell. AJ, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on here.
Could you go over what the general idea of your campaign will be?
Yes, so the two main things I think of our campaign is transparency and enable. So in terms of enable, the Student Association is supposed to be kind of an advocacy center for students, and there are a lot of resources that do exist on campus that students might not necessarily know about. So we want to help enable the students find those resources, have SA kind of be like a magnifying glass to help students find those resources and get together. And also, off of that, also sexual assault is one of our big things too, and being more proactive rather than reactive with things like that. In terms of transparency, we've talked to a lot of different groups and just wanted to bring people together, bring as many people as we can into the Student Association. So everyone have their voice heard. Even athletes who are kind of seen as their own separate thing, just have as many people be a part of it.
So an important role of the Student Association president is being involved with the chancellor and really working closely with the chancellor. And how do you expect, if you get elected, assuming you get elected, how do you expect to work with him? Do you think that will be a good relationship that you guys would have?
I think it will be. He's actually been to a couple of our races, our career races, and we've talked to him. He's a very, very smart guy, and he's a very nice guy. So I think I'm excited to work with him. He has some good ideas. And yeah, I'm very excited to work with him to make the school a better place.
So on your GoFundMe page, initially, I think 2 weeks ago, it initially said that Chancellor Syverud and his minions would make it difficult to run for your candidacy, to actually get involved with this candidacy. Do you think that would ruin the relationship? Or if he sees that, do you think that would turn him away from the relationship?
I don't think so. He has already seen it, actually. But it was obviously meant to be a joke because we do respect the Chancellor. Being write-in candidates, we have to do as much as we possibly can to get our names out and just have people know that we exist. And thought something funny like that, Chancellor Kent and his minions, get people laughing, get people maybe to talk about it. If we can get a few people to laugh and be like, hey, did you guys see this? And spread the word that way, that was the original intent. Nothing malicious at all. But hopefully he doesn't take it personally.
Did he have a reaction that you were able to gauge, or were you able to talk to him about it?
Not to my knowledge, no, not yet. Hope it's not bad.
Well, let's turn to your campaign. You're a write-in candidate, which is the first in Syracuse history. How are you approaching this differently than if you had been on the actual ballot?
I think just getting our names out there, that's the biggest thing. Granted, if we were on the actual ballot, we would still go out and talk to different groups, and because our whole idea is bring in as many people as we can. But it has to be a much more active effort to get people to know our names, because it's a much more active effort having to go and physically type somebody's name into the ballot rather than just clicking on it. So we want people to be proactive and people go there and for that sake. So I think just getting our names out there as much as possible.
So it seems like in this aspect you're actually a trailblazer, as now one more candidate has announced her write-in candidacy. How do you think of yourself as someone who's kind of setting this trend?
You know what? I think it's awesome. It's almost directly tying in with our campaign of trying to bring people in and having people's voices heard. Maybe showing people that just because I'm not sure if they're in SA or not, just because you're not part of SA and you weren't there before, doesn't mean you shouldn't run. Doesn't mean you don't have good ideas, and I'm sure they have great ideas, and Jane and Aisha, they also have really good ideas. So I think it's great that they're doing it. I do see us kind of trailblazers for that, because this has never happened, a write-in, and now there's two of us, and I think this morning maybe a potential third. So I think it's exciting.
Do you see yourself, how are you involved with Student Association?
I'm not involved in Student Association.
So how do you think that would work with you as president? Do you think that since it's a newer experience that you would be able to step into that role, or are you making an effort to learn about what Student Association is and how it works?
Yes. So I've read the bylaws and everything, but I think it's a lot easier to learn the bylaws than have good ideas. So, and I think being athletes and being not part of SA at all, I think we have a unique experience in that sake. We're not maybe less myopic point of view from, this is the way things were always done. We're coming in and saying, hey, maybe we could try this. And we're looking forward to working with different groups and different in the Assembly and Congress and everything. But I just think it'll be good to have a fresh perspective, totally new set of eyes.
All right, great. Well, AJ, thanks for being with us. Good luck with your campaign.
Thank you.
Back to you, Max.
Thank you, Topher. AJ as well. The Secretary of Defense came to Syracuse University on Tuesday. Talking Points correspondent Nick Papantonis was at the event.
Secretary of Defense Carter walked into Dean Hall today with two clear messages. It's going to take more than just the military to solve the problems of today, and the work that Syracuse is doing is a really good place to start.
I partner with Syracuse University, and the brutal answer is the competence.
That was just some of the praise that Carter had for Syracuse University and the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. According to Carter, the research that SU is doing will be key to the future of American defense policy.
And the way we'll know how to improve our game is to build our programs on the back of careful research of a kind that, as I said earlier, this institution almost alone in our country is actually doing.
A future that Carter says will need to include all kinds of public service.
It's just a much wider game now. You can't take that narrow point of view. There's nothing better than getting out of bed in the morning and knowing you're going to be part of something bigger than yourself.
For this reason, one of the areas that received specific praise was the Maxwell School. Dean James Steinberg agrees with the Secretary.
At the end of the day, there's a limit to what the military can accomplish, and so you need to bring all the resources to bear to help deal with problems. Military, diplomatic, economic, values, civic engagement.
Carter also took questions from the audience about today's biggest defense issues. You can view his answers on our YouTube page. For Talking Points, I'm Nick Papantonis.
So, Nick, given the Iranian talks these days now, what was his current position on current events? He talked about it a little bit.
So with regards to the Iranian nuclear talks specifically, he said that his job was to make sure all options were on the table that President Obama had requested. For Ukraine, which he also touched on, he said that he wanted to see the country forge its own path between East and West. In terms of drones, he wanted to see he said that they were a big security issue and they were a big part of keeping Americans safe on the ground. So he had pretty standard talking points, what you normally see in a news cycle. Nothing too surprising there.
Nick Papantonis, great work as always. Thanks so much. Coming up after the break, we talk to a candidate for the Syracuse School Board. You're watching Talking Points. Don't go anywhere.
Staring contest!
You still got it. I know.
Come alive with the forest. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Jimmy can't sing, and Tommy can't dance, so we're gonna put some ants in their pants. Aww.
Kids will spend 22 minutes watching us, the super duper party troopers, sing about ants in their pants.
Isn't that funny? Ants in their pants, they've got ants in their pants, they've got ants in their pants.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes, twice a day. They have the time.
If you want to be a parent, it doesn't matter how you play or even what you wear. You just need to be there. Thousands of teens in foster care don't need perfection. They just need you.
A Syracuse alum is running for the city's school board. Talking Points correspondent Caroline Strange sat down with him earlier today. Sorry about that. We're going to go to Tom Austin actually right now. A class action lawsuit against Dinosaur Barbecue has resurfaced the concerns over fair pay in New York State. Talking Points correspondent Tom Austin is be here momentarily to talk about the ongoing debate in state politics over minimum wage. Tom, how's it going today?
Good. How are you, Max?
Good. You might have to just speak up a little bit. What is the lawsuit dealing with?
Well, it was a lawsuit filed by Fittipelli and Schaefer, and what it pertains to is unfair pay practices at the Dinosaur barbecue chains. And basically what it addresses, some of the issues are not using the tipped credit provision, overworking workers and not receiving proper compensation, not giving them overtime wages, stuff like that. And it's part of this. What's interesting is that they're balking on laws that are already contentious among policymakers. So it's part of this overarching trend where the workers are being slighted and the policymakers are coming to their defense.
So then, what is the plan to combat this larger picture, the bigger picture issue of fair pay in New York State?
Well, there are many plans actually. Carl Heastie is championing a plan where, with the state assembly, he had proposed that there be a $10.50 minimum wage in New York State and $12.50 in New York City. Whereas Governor Cuomo had said something similar, but $1 less in New York City. But when the budget had passed on Tuesday night, neither of them were part of the discussion. So
what makes the wage hike so difficult to pass then?
The Senate has a one-vote majority in favor of Republicans, and they feel that a wage hike would halt business growth, and so there's some pushback from them. And Cuomo's defense is really that the market is strong enough currently to deal with it, but there's kind of a push and pull there that makes it difficult.
My final question for you: for lawmakers who want it passed, what are their expectations moving forward?
Well, Bill de Blasio, for one, has said that he expects the pressure from the public to kind of force senators by the end of the legislative session to get it passed. And so his expectations are that it will eventually, there will be a minimum wage hike, but at this moment, obviously, there hasn't been.
Tom Austin, thanks so much for being with us. A Syracuse alum is running for the city's school board. Talking Points correspondent Caroline Strange sat down with him earlier today.
Joining me now in studio is Dan Romeo. He's running for the Syracuse City School Board and is hoping to get the Democratic nomination in the upcoming election. Dan, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And can you just explain a little bit, I know you grew up here, but why you're choosing to run for the Syracuse School Board?
Because I was born and raised in the city of Syracuse, I want to see the people of Syracuse do as well as they possibly can. And education is something that's very important to me. So I know that through education we can help the people of Syracuse to do great things in life. So I want to run for school board because I think I can make a difference, and I think that in that position I can help to improve our schools from where they are right now.
And do you think that some of the failing schools, what are you going to do to work with those schools? Some of the ones that have been getting bad reviews over the last few years from the state?
It's difficult to call those bad schools or the failing schools because it's how those schools are measured to be failed or bad. But there are things that we can do to improve as a district as a whole. With proper funding, it would be significantly easier, but because of the situation that we're in, we need to find innovative ways to solve these problems. There's specific things like the platform that I'm going to be running on in that we need to improve our career and technical education to help maximize those programs and make them as successful as possible as for where they're going in the future, because we are in the development phase of those. With our early childhood education, we need to get students into school sooner to help advance their careers in school by getting them into pre-K programs. Because we have pre-K classrooms that aren't full right now, we need to find ways to fill those rooms and to get every student that can go into pre-K so that we can start their education as early as possible. Also, by improving the code of conduct and improving safety that's in the school, we can build upon the morale that's in the district right now. And by fixing the current culture that's in the school and turning it around to a more positive one, it'll help us to be more successful, both in the long run and in the short term, so that those failing schools will be helped a little bit at a time as far as getting better. But when you talk about failing schools, it's difficult to say that because of how they're judged.
Mm-hmm. And now the code of conduct that was recently passed, you said it had some trouble this year. What are some of the things you're going to do to help it improve how it works next year?
I want to make sure that it gets the funding that it needs as far as resources for the people in the schools that deal with the code of conduct every day. The resources as far as manpower and getting the people in place that are needed to support the code of conduct, and just an overall turnaround of how people feel about the code. Because of the lack of training and the lack of resources that we haven't put into it, people don't have a good viewpoint of the code of conduct, but it isn't a bad thing. It's just something that needs the idea of it turned around, which hopefully we can do.
Mm-hmm. And now you're seeking the Democratic nomination for one of their 4 spots. What are you going to do if you don't get that?
I plan on primarying, but really it comes down to getting the most effective people on the board to make a difference in our schools. So if there are people that I think are going to do a great job on the board, then maybe I won't primary. But if I feel like I can do a better job than some of the people that are selected, I'm going to primary because I want the best for our schools. And if I think that I'm the best person for that and I need a primary, then I will.
All right, thanks so much, Dan. Talking Points will be right back.
I think that Citrus TV is important because especially this year, Syracuse has been in the news so often, and we've often been there first to be able to cover that and really deliver it to the students.
Citrus TV News is for our campus and our students.
The great thing about Citrus is we allow students to tell their stories, and we get to listen to their concerns.
Citrus is important because we cover campus news in a way that no one else really does.
Citrus TV is the voice of Syracuse University, and it's something we're very proud of and a responsibility that we take very seriously.
Indiana has recently signed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act into law. However, there's been much controversy with it. Talking Points correspondent Jonathan Olins is here in the studio. John, good evening. Indiana has been in the news for signing a new law into religious freedom. A religious freedom bill, and a controversy arose. Can you clarify what the law actually states?
Yes. Well, the law actually states that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act says that the government cannot substantially burden a person's ability to follow their religious beliefs unless it can be proven that it's a compelling interest in imposing that burden or do so in the least restrictive way. So this prevents the government from infringing on people on people and their ability to exercise their religious beliefs.
So now there's been a lot of talk about Arkansas in this whole debate as well. Can you give me an update with Arkansas?
Yes, well, Arkansas is just one of the other states that has a religious freedom bill. And in Arkansas, their latest thing is that they were planning on having a religious freedom bill, and they still are. The governor today had the Senate and the House in Arkansas fix up their proposed bill. They signed it into law today with the fixed version or the revised version that the governor said that he would sign. And just like I mentioned as well, Arkansas is just one of the many states that has a bill like this. 19 other states besides Indiana, so that makes now 20 states in the country have a religious freedom bill.
So 20 states have this religious freedom bill. So what's the national impact as well as the local impact of this law?
Well, yes, the national impact is that some companies such as Apple, the CEO of companies such as like Apple, Walmart, which is based in Arkansas, have voiced their opinions against such a law because they say that it discriminates against the LGBT community. And so with the new laws that Indiana passed today, their revisions, and Arkansas's revisions, they said there's now language in it that emphasizes how it cannot discriminate against the LGBT community, or it cannot discriminate against any person individually. But also the NCAA, there's an issue with that too, because NCAA is based in Indiana, or in Indianapolis, and then they're, with the Final Four in it now, being placed in the Indianapolis now, there's talks about what will happen in the future and other stuff like that, but there's many companies that are boycotting it. And here locally in Syracuse and in New York, they're boycotting unessential government travel to Indiana and to other places that have such a bill because of all the negativity and because of all the controversialness that is coming out of it.
Jonathan Olens, thanks so much for being with us tonight. U.S. firms are investing big money on Mexican oil companies. Talking Points correspondent Abby Budeman joins me in studio now to talk about whether this will lead to the privatization of the Mexican oil market. Abby, good evening.
Good evening, Max.
So tell us what's happening between the Mexican oil market and U.S. oil investors.
So just last week, the largest Mexican oil company has just landed its first major investment in history. Now, BlackRock and First Reserve, which are two large investment firms based in New York City, has just cashed in $900 million in the nation's oil company. And what this means is that they are cashing in 45% of the stake that they are creating together, the project that they are creating together, which is a major pipeline that will run between the United States to central Mexico. And this is a major, major project for Mexico.
So this major project, is that going to impact the current structure of the Mexican oil market?
It definitely will. Since 1917, Mexico has been what is called a monopoly in terms of its oil market. A monopoly is where only one supplier is controlling the whole production of one good into the country. And that is what the Mexican oil system has been going through.
How does that affect the U.S. economy? Sorry to cut you off.
Yes. So what is happening is that now that it's becoming more private, this will lead in more collaboration between U.S. and Mexican oil firms. And this will definitely benefit both countries in terms of their national GDP and also just in general the betterment of the relationship in terms of international relations and diplomacy.
Abby Budeman, thank you so much. Coming up after the break, we'll talk about the latest news in climate change. Stay with us on Talking Points.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
California Governor Jerry Brown announced restrictions on water use this week as a result of one of the worst droughts in the state's history. Talking Points correspondents Mike Riccardi and Josh Carney are joining me now in studio to talk about climate change and some actions that the U.S. and other countries are taking to combat it. Josh and Mike, good evening.
Thanks for having us.
Starting with you, Mike, what has the climate status been in the past year and today as well?
So we've had record melting in the Antarctic ice. There's also been some melting up in the Greenland ice caps. And up in Greenland, the ice caps melting has basically caused the Atlantic current to kind of switch things up. The water around the area is becoming less salinated, which makes it less dense, and this causes the current to slow down, which is in turn concentrated a lot of the cold air and weather in the Northeast, which has been a main, that's why we had such crippling winter this past year. And then beyond that, over on the West Coast, you have California, like you said, that has the record drought. And they've said they only have 1 year left of water in the reserves. And the snowpacks where they get most of their water over the summer because it's melting is 6% of what it normally is.
So moving to you, Josh, what can the global community do to curtail the issue?
Well, there are several different measures that we can all take as individuals, but nations by and large need to start employing separate ideals in order to curtail carbon emissions as we see them today. The most popular being a carbon tax, as well as mileage limitations within the United States. We've seen specifically that President Obama agreeing to terms that fuel and gas mileage within cars must depreciate or must increase to 54.5 gallons by 2025. We can also see the ideas of a carbon tax being implemented, where it would cost about $25 per ton of CO2, which would raise gas prices around 25 cents. Now, these are all different facets of a larger and larger issue. So ultimately, investing in renewable energies as well as green industry is going to be the most pragmatic approach for the global community.
So Mike, talking about renewable energy in the green industry, what is the future looking like for that?
Well, green energy is growing rapidly. This past year alone, wind production reached 370 gigawatts, which is an extremely high number. And then in the solar industry, solar already has more jobs than the coal mining industry has. Employment grew by 22%, which is a higher growth than both the gas and oil construction industry and the extraction industry. So it's growing rapidly, and the New York Times did an interview with Al Gore, and in that piece they wrote that the experts predicted that in 2010 the solar industry would produce 1 gigawatt of energy. It was 48 times that in 2010.
So Josh, how has the United States already found global partners to make progress with the issue?
The United States has partnered with the #1 polluter in the entire world, which is China, and they signed a pact together to decrease carbon emissions within the next 10 to 15 years. The United States said itself it will decrease carbon emissions from 26 to 28% by 2030. That exceeds exactly what we were going to say back in 2005 to get to this point. In fact, China made a huge commitment claiming that 20% of its energy by 2030 is going to be coming from renewable sources, which is a major step by the largest polluter in the world.
Josh and Mike, thank you so much. Great segment as always. That's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you for watching Talking Points. Make sure to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. You can go to our blog for more Talking Points content. I'm Max Darrow, and like I said, have a great night, Syracuse.